Well, hello, sugar. Come on in. Now, last time I promised you we'd go down the cellar steps, and today we are going. But I want to tell you what a root cellar actually was first. Because I think folks picture a shelf of canning jars, and that is not it at all. My mama's cellar was a hole dug back into the hillside behind the house, lined with rock, with a plank door and dirt for a floor. There was no electricity in it. There was no thermometer in it. There was no machine of any kind. And that room kept a family of 8, in potatoes and apples and cabbage and turnips, from October clear through to the first greens in April. 6 months of food, alive, in the dark, running on nothing. Now the reason that worked is not luck, and it is not because things were tougher back then, honey. It is because that room was engineered by people who could not have told you a word of the science and every single thing about it, where it was dug, how deep, which way the door faced, where the pipes went, what the floor was made of. Every bit of that was doing a job. So today it's 25 things about the cellar itself, and I will tell you at number 8 why an apple must never ever sit beside a potato, and at number 9 I will tell you the one mistake that will rot your whole bin before Christmas. Start at number 1, sugar. Number 1. The ground is doing all the work. Here is the whole secret of a root cellar in one sentence, honey. Go down far enough into the earth and the temperature quits changing. Up here on top, we go from 95 in August to 5 below in January, and everything we own has to survive that swing. But dig down 6 or 8 feet, and the ground just sits, all year, at about the average for wherever you live, which in our mountains is somewhere in the high 40s, low 50s. It does not care what the weather is doing. It does not know it is January. All that dirt is so slow to warm and so slow to cool that the seasons flatten out entirely by the time they get down there. So a cellar is not a cold box, sugar. It is a hole poked into a thing that is already the right temperature and has been since before anybody was born. Mama did not run that cellar. She just borrowed a corner of the mountain and let the mountain hold it steady. There is no electric bill on the earth, honey. Number 2. It goes in the north side of the hill. Now where you dug mattered as much as how deep, and Mama's daddy did not pick that spot by accident. The cellar went into the north face of the bank, in the shade, where the sun does not reach in the afternoon. A south-facing bank bakes all day in the summer, and that heat soaks slowly back through the earth, and by August, your cellar is warm and everything in it is sprouting. North side stays shaded, stays cool, stays even. And you look for the moss, honey. That is the tell. Where the moss and the ferns grow thick and stay green through a dry spell. That ground is cool and holds its damp, and that is exactly what you want. The old folks read the ground by what was growing on it. And you dug into the bank, not down into a flat, because going in sideways gets you your depth on one wall for free and gives you a door you can walk through instead of a hatch you have to climb down in the dark with your arms full. Number 3. Below the frost line, above the water. 2 numbers govern the digging, and they pull against each other. You have to get down below the frost line, which is however deep the ground freezes solid where you live, because anything above that line will freeze in a hard winter, and freezing ruins near about everything in a cellar. But you must not dig down into the water table, because a cellar with water seeping into the floor is a cellar that will not keep anything. It goes to mold, and the whole room sours. So you go deep enough for the frost and you stop before the water, and in these mountains, up on a bank with good drainage below, that was usually 6 or 8 feet in, and you dug in the late summer sugar, when the water table sits at its lowest all year, because if you dig in April, when everything is running full, you will find a nice dry hole, and then come the next spring you will find a spring in your cellar. Dig in the dry time, and you learn the truth about that ground. Number 4. The floor stays dirt, and that is on purpose. Now every instinct a modern person has says to pour concrete down there and make it clean. Do not. Mama's cellar had a dirt floor, and it was the most important surface in the room, because that dirt is where the wet comes from. Root vegetables are mostly water, honey, and if the air around them is dry, they will pull moisture out of themselves and go limp and rubbery and shriveled in a month. A carrot wants air that is nearly wringing wet, 90% and better. Bare earth breathes moisture up into the room all day long and holds that damp steady without you doing one thing. Concrete seals it off and gives you a dry cellar, and a dry cellar shrivels your roots. If the floor got too dry in a long spell, she would just sprinkle water on it out of a can, or set a pan of water in the corner, and the room would come right back. The floor is not the thing you store food on, sugar. The floor is a machine that makes the weather in that room. Number 5. 2 pipes, one high and one low. This is the piece of real engineering in a root cellar, and it is the piece everybody leaves out. You need 2 vents, not 1, and they must be at different heights. One opens low, down near the floor, and one opens high, up at the ceiling, and ideally they are on opposite ends of the room. And here is why, honey. Warm air rises. So the warm, stale, damp air in that cellar climbs to the ceiling and goes out the high pipe all by itself, and as it leaves it, pulls cool, fresh air in through the low one. That is a current running through your cellar day and night, with no fan and no power on earth, just because warm air goes up. They call it the chimney draw. One pipe alone does almost nothing, sugar, because the air has no way to come in, so it just sits there, and the air has to move, because what comes off stored vegetables is the very gas that spoils them, and it must be carried out. 2 pipes, high and low. That is the whole trick, and it costs you nothing to run forever. Number 6. Wood shelves, with a gap behind them. The shelves in that cellar were rough sawn boards, and there were 2 rules about them. First, wood, never metal. Metal is cold to the touch, and it stays colder than the air around it, so in a damp room water beads up on it, and whatever is sitting there sits in a wet spot and rots from underneath. Wood takes on the room's own temperature and does not sweat. Second, and this is the one people miss, the shelves never touched the wall. They stood a good hand's width out from the stone, and the boards themselves had gaps between them, because that current we just built at number 5 has to get all the way around every single thing in that room. Air must pass under the shelf, behind the shelf, and between the boards. Anything sitting in a dead pocket of still air is sitting in its own gas and its own damp, And that is where the rot starts. Always. Every time. Push everything against the wall to be tidy, sugar, and you have built yourself a nice orderly room where things go bad. Number 7. There are 3 different weathers in one little room. Now here is the thing that turns a cellar from a hole into a system, honey. That room is not all one climate. It has layers. Down low near the dirt floor it is coldest and dampest. Up high near the ceiling it is a few degrees warmer and noticeably drier. And near the door, in winter it is colder than anywhere. And different foods want completely different things. Potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, cabbage, they want it cold and wet, so they live down low on the floor and in the bottom bins. Onions and garlic want it cold and bone dry, because damp makes them soft and moldy, so they hang up high where the air is driest. Pumpkins and winter squash want it cool but nowhere near as cold, and dry, so they never went in the cellar at all, they went upstairs in the house. Mama did not have a word for any of this. She just knew potatoes go low, onions go high, pumpkins stay up under the bed. 1 room, sugar, 3 different weathers, and she used every one of them. Number 8. Never let the apple sit by the potato. Here it is, sugar, the one I promised you. Apples and potatoes must be kept apart, and I mean apart. Different ends of the cellar, or better yet, different rooms. And it is not superstition. A ripening apple breathes out a gas, and that gas is what tells fruit to ripen, and it drifts. It will not stay in the crate. So an apple sitting near your potato bin is quietly telling every potato in it to wake up and start growing. And inside of a few weeks, those potatoes have gone soft and sprouted eyes an inch long, and they are ruined. It runs the other way too, honey. Potatoes give off a damp, earthy smell, and an apple will take that smell up right through its skin, and then you bite into it in January, and it tastes like the cellar floor. So they poison each other, each in its own way. Mama kept the apples in a barrel by the door, and the potatoes in the dark back corner, and she would have swatted you for moving either one. She did not know the word for that gas. She just knew what happened when you got it wrong. Number 9. Nothing goes in that room hurt. And here is the one, honey. The mistake that will rot your whole bin before Christmas. It is not the temperature, and it is not the damp. It is putting away one damaged vegetable. A potato with a spade cut in it. An apple that got dropped and bruised. A turnip nicked by the fork coming out of the ground. Because an unbroken skin is a sealed suit of armor, and nothing can get in through it. Break that skin, even a little, and now the rot has a door, and it walks in, and it settles, and it spreads to everything touching it, and then to everything touching those. That is the whole meaning of one bad apple spoiling the barrel. It is not a saying, sugar. It is a fact, and I have watched it happen. So Mama sorted every single thing at the cellar door, by hand, one at a time, and anything cut or bruised or soft did not go in. It went straight to the kitchen to be eaten that week, or to the hogs. Perfect ones only go in the dark. Eat your damaged ones first. That one rule will save you more food than everything else I say today. Number 10. Do not wash a thing you mean to keep. Everything that came out of that garden went into the cellar with the dirt still on it, and it looked a fright, and that is correct. 2 reasons, honey. The first is that washing puts water in every little crease and crack and around the stem, and that water sits there in a cold, damp room and never dries, and wet skin is where mold starts. The second is that the dirt itself is doing a job. A dry coat of soil on a carrot is a blanket. It slows that carrot from drying out and it shades it, and it is a barrier besides. So you knock the loose clods off with your hand, gently, and that is all L. You wash it in February when you carry it up to the kitchen to cook it, not in October when you put it away. And be gentle knocking that dirt off, sugar, because a hard scrub takes the skin with it, and now you are back at number 9 with a broken skin. Dirty and whole beats clean and scratched, every single time. Number 11. Cure it before it goes down. Almost nothing goes straight from the ground into the cellar, honey. There is a step in between, and it is called curing, and each thing wants its own. Potatoes come up and get spread out one layer deep somewhere dim and airy, but not in the sun, and they sit about a week or two. In that time the skin thickens and toughens up, and any little scrape they got from the digging fork heals itself over and seals. A cured potato keeps for months. An uncured one goes off by Christmas. Onions and garlic go the other way. They need to get properly dry, spread out where the air moves until the necks are papery and rustle when you touch them, and only then do they hang. Winter squash wants warm and dry for a week or two to harden that rind up. Sweet potatoes want warm and damp, which is backwards from everything else. Learn what each one wants for its first 2 weeks, sugar, and it will pay you back for 6 months. Number 12. Do not let them touch each other. In the good bins, nothing was piled loose. Roots went down in layers, a bed of clean sand or dry leaves, or sawdust, a layer of carrots laid out not touching, more sand over them, another layer, and so on to the top of the box. Now this does 3 separate things at once, honey, and it is worth understanding. It holds the damp right up against each root, so it does not shrivel. It keeps everyone in the dark, and most of all, it puts a wall between every vegetable and its neighbor, so that if one does start to turn, and one always will, that rot has nowhere to walk to. It cannot cross the sand. You lose the one instead of losing the box. That is the whole thinking of the old cellar in a nutshell, sugar. She could not stop things from going wrong, so she built it so that when one thing went wrong, it could not take everything else with it. Number 13. Walk down there once a week and cull. This was a chore, honey, and it happened every week without fail. You take the lantern down, and you go along the bins and you look, and you put your hands in. Anything gone soft, anything with a dark sunken spot, anything sprouting, anything that smells even a little bit off, comes out that minute. You do not think about it, and you do not give it another week to see, because we said at number 9 that rot spreads, and it spreads fast in a warm, damp corner, and one apple you left because you were tired can cost you the barrel, and the other half of it is your nose, sugar. Mama could open that door and stand at the top of the steps and know something was wrong down there before she saw a thing. A cellar going bad has a smell, sweetish and sour at the same time. If it smells like clean earth and apples, it is fine. If it smells sweet and wet, something is dying, and you go find it tonight, not tomorrow. Number 14. Light turns a potato poison. This one is not about keeping, honey. This one is about safety, and it is real. A potato left where light gets at it, daylight or lamplight, will turn green just under the skin. Everybody has seen it. Now most folks think that green is mold, or that it is just gone old. It is not. That green is the potato turning itself into a plant, and along with the green it makes a bitter substance that will genuinely make you sick. A bad stomach, and a headache, and worse if you eat enough of it. And that bitter part does not cook out, honey. Boiling will not save it, and frying will not save it. So potatoes live in the dark, always, in a covered bin, or under burlap, or down in the blackest corner. If one has gone green in a small patch, you cut that part away deep, and use the rest. If it is green all through, or if it tastes bitter, it goes to the hogs, and not to your children. The old folks knew that green meant, throw it out, sugar. They just did not know why. Number 15. Freezing is as bad as rot. Everybody worries about a cellar being too warm, honey, and hardly anybody worries about it getting too cold, and a hard cold snap will ruin you faster than a mild spell. A potato that freezes goes sweet and watery and turns black when you cook it. Apples freeze and go to mush the minute they thaw. Cabbage turns to slime. So in a bad cold spell, Mama shut the vents down, both of them, and stuffed old sacks and straw up against the door where the wind came under. And here is the pretty trick, sugar. She would carry down a couple of big stone jugs of water and set them on the floor. Water gives off a surprising amount of heat as it cools and freezes, and those jugs sit there and give up their warmth slowly all night. And they will hold a small cellar above freezing through a night that would have killed everything. The jug freezes instead of your potatoes, and the same jugs kept the room from swinging too fast the rest of the year besides. Number 16. If they are shriveling, the room is too dry. A cellar can go wrong in the dry direction too, especially in a long, hard freeze when the outside air holds nothing at all, and the food tells you before any instrument would. Carrots go bendy, beets get soft, potato skins go loose and wrinkled like an old glove, apples go dull and the skin puckers. That is not age, honey, that is thirst, and the room is drinking them. The fix is simple and free. Wet the dirt floor with a watering can. Set out pans of water. Lay damp burlap sacks over the open crates, and wet them again when they dry. Any of it will bring the damp back up. Now do not go the other way and drown the place, sugar, because standing water and dripping walls give you mold, and mold is its own trouble. What you want is a room that feels cool and wet on your face when you walk in, like the air right before a rain. When it feels like that, everything in there is comfortable. Number 17. Everything down there wants your food. A cellar full of food in the middle of winter is the most attractive place for a mile in every direction, honey, and every mouse and rat and squirrel in the county knows it. So the vents got screened over with fine wire, always, because an open pipe is an open door. Anything that could be got at went into stone crocks with heavy lids instead of open baskets. The shelf legs sometimes stood in tin cans because a mouse cannot climb slick tin. The door got a tight sill so there was no gap underneath, and there was always a cat with a job, and you look for the signs every time you go down, sugar, the little dark droppings, the gnawed corner of a crate, sawdust where there was none, because it is never one mouse. It is one mouse first, and then it is a family, and then they are living in your potato bin, and you are feeding them all winter instead of feeding your own. Number 18. Cabbage keeps best hung by its own root. Cabbage will hold for months in a cellar, but it does not want to sit on a shelf, because the bottom of it goes to slime where it touches. So Mama pulled her cabbages up with the roots still on, dirt and all, and hung them upside down from the beam by a bit of twine tied round the root. The whole head has air all the way around it that way, and there is no wet spot anywhere on it. The outer leaves dry and go papery, and that is exactly right, because those leaves are the wrapper, and they protect what is inside. You peel them off in February, and there is a firm, sound head under there. And I will tell you the other thing about cabbage sugar, which is that it smells, and so do turnips, and that smell will get into apples and into milk if you keep them near. So cabbage hung at the far end, and near the vent, so the draw carried the smell out the pipe instead of round the room. Number 19. Fill it about 2/3, and no fuller. There is a strong temptation with a good harvest to pack that cellar to the roof, honey, and it is a mistake. A crowded cellar is a warm cellar. Every apple and every potato in there is quietly giving off a tiny bit of heat and a tiny bit of damp all the time, because they are still alive and still breathing, slow as it is. Pack the room solid, and all that heat has nowhere to go, and no air can move between the boxes to carry it off, and the middle of the room warms up, and the middle of every stack goes bad first, while the outside looks perfect. So you leave lanes, space between the crates, space off the walls, space to walk with a lantern and see every side of everything. About 2/3 full is right, and a cellar you cannot walk into is a cellar you will not check every week, sugar, and we already said what happens then. Number 20. Eat the room in the right order. A cellar is not a place you take from at random, honey. It is a queue, and the order was known. You eat first the things that will not last, and you save for last the things that will. So through October and November you are eating the pears, the soft apples, the cabbage that did not head up tight, the squash with a mark on it. Around Christmas you are into the good apples and the beets. January and February is potatoes and turnips and carrots and hard cabbage, the real keepers, because those will go clear to spring if you have done everything right. And by March the potatoes are starting to sprout no matter what you do, so you are eating them fast and picking the eyes off, and the last few go back in the ground as seed. Mama could stand at that door in November and tell you what week in February a thing would be eaten. That is not a recipe, sugar. That is a whole winter, planned out in the dark. Number 21. Cover them, but never seal them. This is the balance the whole cellar rides on, and it catches people out. Everything in there wants to be covered, to keep the light off, and to hold the damp in close. But nothing in there can be sealed, because everything in there is still breathing, and a sealed box fills up with the very gas that ripens and spoils. So the coverings were always breathing ones. A loose board across the bin, a burlap sack laid over, straw heaped on, never a tight lid, never a sheet of anything that does not pass air. And this is exactly why a modern plastic bag turns a potato to black soup in about a week. Cover for dark and damp, leave a gap for breath, and it is the same principle as the 2 pipes at number 5, sugar, and the gap behind the shelf at number 6, and the sand between the carrots at number 12. Air must always be able to move. Near enough every rule down there is that same rule wearing a different hat. Number 22. No cellar? Then bury it in the yard. Now plenty of families had no cellar at all, honey, and they still kept roots all winter. And this is how. You dig a shallow pit out in a well-drained spot. Line it thick with straw or dry leaves. Heap your turnips and carrots and beets in a mound. Cover them over with more straw, and then throw a good layer of dirt over the whole thing and pat it down, leaving a little wisp of straw poking out the top to let it breathe. That is all it is. The earth and the straw together hold the frost off, and the ground underneath does the same steady cooling as a proper cellar. And you make several small ones instead of one big one, sugar. And that is the important part, because every time you open one in the dead of winter, you have let the cold in, and you must use up everything in it. Small pits mean you open one, eat it out, and the rest stay sealed. It is a poor man's cellar and it works. Number 23. Empty it out and clean it every spring. When the cellar came near empty in April, it did not just sit there till fall. Everything came out. The bins came out and got scrubbed and set in the sun, because sunlight kills what is living on them better than any soap. The old sand and straw got carried out and spread on the garden. The floor got raked over, and the walls got a coat of lime wash, that thick white stuff, which brightens the room so you can see what you are doing, and which is hard on mold besides. And then, honey, the door in both vents got left wide open all summer long, and that room aired out and dried out for months. That is what kept a cellar from slowly turning sour year on year. Every autumn it started fresh, instead of starting with last year's mold still in the corners. Most things that last a long time, sugar, get emptied out and scrubbed once a year. Cellars, churns, and I would say people too. Number 24. Take the lantern and mind it. A root cellar is properly dark, honey. Dark like nothing in a lit-up house is dark, and you did not go down there without a light. But there is a thing worth knowing about a closed-up cellar, sugar. A room full of vegetables breathing all winter with the vents shut down against the cold can go bad in the air itself. The old folks would not have said it that way, but they had the rule. If you have had it sealed up a long while, open the door and let it stand a bit before you go all the way down. And there was a test, honey, and it is a good one. Carry the lantern down ahead of you. If the flame burns low or goes out, you back up those steps and you open it up and you let it air, and you do not go down again till it burns clean. That little flame needs the same thing you need. Cellars are safe places, sugar, but they are safe because people were careful in them, and that is a different thing from safe by accident. Number 25. That room was the money. And here is the last one, sugar. And it is not a trick. In November, when that cellar was full, my mama would stand at the top of the steps with the lantern and just look at it a minute before she came up. And I did not understand that until I was grown. Because there was no money in that house, honey. Not cash money. Hardly ever. What there was that room. A full cellar meant nobody in that family was going to be hungry between now and April, no matter what happened, no matter if the weather turned or the work dried up, or somebody took sick. It was the only security she had, and she had built it herself, out of dirt and rock and a summer's work. That is what she was looking at. Not potatoes. And I will tell you, sugar, I have a deep freeze now and a store 4 miles down the road, and I have never once in my life felt as safe as that woman looks standing at the top of those steps in November. Well, that is the cellar, sugar. Floor to ceiling, and October to April. And I hope you can see now that it was never just a hole in the ground. Every bit of it was thought out by people who had to get it right. Now, you tell me down in the comments, honey, does anybody out there still have a working root cellar? I would dearly love to hear about it, and I want to know what your people kept in theirs, because it is different in every part of the country, and I learn something from you every single week. If you got one thing out of today, you go on and press that like button for me. And if you want to keep the old ways alive, you subscribe and bring somebody young back with you next time. And next time, sugar, we are going to the hen house. How my mama kept hens laying straight through the dark of winter, with no lights and no heat. What she fed them that cost her nothing at all. And the one thing folks do out of kindness that will stop a hen laying cold. This is Granny Pearl, and my chair is always right here. Bless your heart for sitting with me, honey. Now go check your potatoes.